Hey guys, what's happening? So recently, a special metal that has not been seen in quite some time has made its return in Marvel Comics. So we gotta take a few and talk about what exactly is going on here. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so going into this, we start out in the Northwest Territories of Canada, where we find Wolverine running with a pack of wolves, because that's just something he goes back to every now and then. But no, really, as a part of From the Ashes, this series is following the events of Fall of X and the end of the Krakoan era, which was very rushed and underwhelming as far as endings go, but it's basically been a huge reset for the X-Men, where on one hand you got Cyclops starting things over in Alaska with a much smaller team, Forge is leading X-Force on this mission to fix the world after cranking up his abilities, but for Wolverine, after everything that's happened, between Orcus, Charles, and leaving Krakoa, it's all taken its toll on him. So he went to what he found to be a more simple life to get his head straight. But as usual, when Wolverine tries to go and live a simple life, someone from his past comes looking for him, where in this case, that person is Cyber. And I gotta say this here because I can't remember the last time we even talked about this guy. But when I was a kid back in the 90s, I wanted Cyber to be so much more than just some dude that kind of popped up here and there. Because when I first saw him, it wasn't his first appearance in Marvel Comics Presents. But this was closer to the mid 90s where because of Fatal Attractions, Wolverine just had his bone claws, and this dude Cyber was giving him hell. This dude was jacked, he has adamantium skin, he's crazy strong, and his nails or his claws would release these poisons that at one point caused Wolverine to foam at the mouth and hallucinate, and believed that Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, and Moira were working together with Magneto and Cyber to take Logan's adamantium. Which, to be fair, at the time, after losing his adamantium, his healing factor was weaker for a while, which made him more susceptible to the poisons and hallucinogens, but later on Moira was able to flush them out of his system. And as you might imagine, it was hard for Kitty to see Logan like this, because they were really close. And at that time, Zoe Culloden, who has history with both Wolverine and Cyber, she was like, Kitty Pryde and Jubilation Lee, why does he keep forming these interdependent relationships with adolescent girls? And looking back now, I'm kind of like just whoa, chill. And you know, at the time, she was just saying what everybody else was already thinking. And you know, fast forward to the whole thing with Squirrel Girl, that didn't help, and that's why I got retconned so fast. But either way, we're talking about Cyber here, because he also has the ability to see thought waves from miles away, which is what makes him such a good tracker. But this also allowed him to see Logan's fear, which I really thought was cool at the time, but he never quite managed to be the antagonist that I thought he would become. Because taking things back even further, Cyber was said to be Wolverine's worst nightmare come to life. And I just mean me personally, I never bought into that. And I mean, he's had his moments, which we'll talk about as we get through this, but yeah, no. But as Wolverine's out here in the Northwest Territories of Canada, we find that Cyber's hunting him down. And because Cyber has a long history with Logan, and he also ages slowly because of his healing factor, he thinks back to a time of when he trained Logan while he was part of the Canadian Army in a special unit called the Devil's Brigade, which is a story that was told back in the 2006 Wolverine Origin series. But he remembers here how when he trained Logan multiple decades ago, how he had something wild in his blood, and how that part of Logan would refuse discipline. And he can tell that Logan has leaned further into that side of himself now. But while Cyber's here, he finds himself surrounded by local authorities who he saw coming from a mile away. But these guys came out because they got a report of some dude running around naked with wolves, holding a bunch of knives. And Cyber entertains this long enough just to let these guys get close enough so he can tell them that they got the wrong killer. And he more or less tells them like, yeah, you found the killer, but it's the wrong killer. So he puts his gun down and he tears these dudes apart with his bare hands, because that's what Cyber prefers. And then also around this time you got Nightcrawler, who's made his way here to really just check on his friend. And it's not so much that Kurt thinks that Logan's up against some crazy threat, but it's more so like Kurt's concerned and he's here to save Logan from himself, because isolation and alienation is not a good combination. But while Kurt's out here, he comes across the mangled bodies of the local officials, just seconds before he's attacked by Logan. And it takes a moment here because Kurt's got to do some ducking and dodging and bamfing out of the way, before Logan sniffs that familiar scent of brimstone, and he eventually realizes it's him. And Logan admits to Kurt here that he didn't notice at first because his head's in a really messed up place, which then has Kurt like, these bodies, what happened here? And that's when Logan tells him that the same thing happened to his pack, because they were all slaughtered as well. And because of the headspace that Logan's in right now, he doesn't think that he's any good to the X-Men, and he believes that he's the one to blame for the slaughter of his pack. And I mean, I'm not going to say that this is his fault, but if I were to move to the Northwest Territories of Canada and I were to start chopping logs or something, and I hear something like, hey, here's the new guy Logan, he's gonna be chopping logs with us, I'd just be like, nope, I'm out. Like, you're not about to have me killed as motivation. Like what I look like building your character. But nonetheless, he knew that this wasn't something that was gonna last. So Kurt tells him that he's sorry about what happened, and that he's sure that this pack was like a family to Logan, but he still has a family out there who needs him. So he tries to give Logan his uniform, only for him to turn it down at first and say how that's the past and it's behind him. But then they hear screams off in the distance, and Logan can smell the blood, gun smoke, and adamantium coming from that way. And it's right there where he doesn't really argue anymore. He's just like, alright Elf, let's go. So he suits up and they head to the nearby campsite to check it out. And by the way, with Wolverine calling Kurt Elf, it's a term of endearment. And when they get to the campsite to see what's going on, they quickly find out that one of these guys is already dead. And at first they startle these guys before one of them's like, oh, they're superheroes, they come to help. And that's where they explain what happened. They're like, this dude walked up and they thought he was another camper until they saw his metal arms. And they're describing him like, well, the dude had guns, but he just punched Dave to death like he was doing it for fun. And that's where another one of these guys is like, oh yeah, that psycho also said he did this to draw him out. So which one of you is him? And that's when the other camper's like, wait a minute, that costume, I thought they were Avengers or something. They're mutants. So it's like, oh, here we go again. Because on one hand, the X-Men are trying to be seen in a better light these days. And I mean, what Charles did didn't help. And I'm sure more of those details will come into the light soon. But this quickly escalates to the point to where one of these guys is like, I hope that dude finds you and he kills you. So Kurt tries to de-escalate the situation, but Logan's just like, forget him. The guy who did this comes back, they deserve what they get. And of course, with Logan saying that, it's not helping. But then it's here where Cyber comes back and he nearly catches Kurt with a headshot. But fortunately, it only grazed him. So Wolverine rushes to get Kurt out of the line of fire. He takes him to cover and he wraps his head to stop the bleeding so he could at least leave him here for a moment before he heads back out. And at this point, Wolverine's pieced everything together and he knows he's dealing with Cyber. And when the two of them come face to face, for Cyber, for him it's like he's been waiting a while for this. Because during the Krakoa era, Cyber was like, nah, he on an island full of heavy hitters, I'm not about to just run up in that. But out here in a location that Cyber's way more familiar with, that's another story. But while they're out here fighting and all this adamantium is just a ping-pinging and a ting-tinging, we're told here that the screech and squeal of adamantium on adamantium echoes through the forest. Down the mountainside, the sound travels. The clamor is seeping deep into the caverns. Deeper, still it travels into the seemingly bottomless depths of the earth where metal is born. And there the sound is heard. It is pure and it is true. Once it was wielded by the worthy. Its many names rang out in the hands of heroes. In the many centuries since that age, it has slumbered. But the dim distant echoes of man's false metal have grown louder every day of this unworthy age. And on this night, that screaming screech grows loud enough to pierce the very earth above it. It wakes. And it's here we see this mysterious gold metal responding to the sound of adamantium clashing and making its way to the surface. And when it comes to this mysterious gold metal, it isn't something new, and we'll talk more about what exactly it is and where it's shown up in Marvel Comics before, both on Earth 616 as well as alternate Earths as well. But at this point, Wolverine, he's put the claws away and he's just beating the mess out of Cyber because the dude may have adamantium skin, but his insides are regular. So Wolverine's like, I'm just gonna keep punching until they turn to jelly. And then he's like, oh yeah, you remember that time I bit your eye out? Yeah, you know I messed up back then because I should have taken them both. And I want to say at the time, Wolverine bit out Cyber's left eye if I remember correctly. So this time he stabs Cyber in the right eye, which is wild. But Cyber ends up getting away because he tells Logan that he can come after him. But if he does, it's likely that his little blue friend's gonna bleed out. And when Wolverine starts to go after him, Cyber's like, oh, so you really are an animal, huh? And that's when Logan stops, he thinks about it, and he goes back for Kurt, who fortunately is okay since one of the campers was looking after him. So Logan starts to thank her, but she's just like, nah, I'm only here because I'm a doctor and I took an oath. And it's just like, alright, thanks. But fortunately, Kurt's okay. But following this, when we head back over to Cyber, who's made his way to a nearby cave to recover, it's here where he's attacked by the gold metal. As we're told, it has purified him of his weak will, made him worthy of wielding, but its work has only begun. More of the false adamantium remains, and it will not rest until all of it has been purged from this earth. And when this happens, all of Cyber's adamantium is taken over by this mysterious metal that we'll learn more about in a little bit. But first we jump over to the next morning, where we pick up with Logan watching the sunrise and thinking about how this recent run-in with Cyber was basically a reminder of how he can't hide from the world, because anytime he does, the people he cares about pay for it. But while he's packing things up, he hears a group of soldiers closing in, so he heads down to check it out. And quickly he realizes that these are guys from Department H, who are the branch of the Canadian government that handles superhero activity. And because of Logan's history with them, he knows them very well. And he recognizes right away that these guys are just foot soldiers, where the whole time most of them are just using their bio trackers instead of turning their head to the right and seeing Logan right there. So he's able to adjust his breathing and his heartbeat and be basically invisible to these guys. And really all of them except for one, who actually has some tracking skills and nearly finds Logan at one point. But the reason these guys have come here, it's mainly because of Cyber. Because after Cyber killed those local officials, the campers called it in and that brought down a manhunt. And at this point, Logan knows that Cyber's long gone. So he's not worried about these guys running into him. But even still, he suits up and he keeps a close eye on these guys in hopes of them wrapping this up and packing it up. But then 2 hours later, one of them gets really close to finding Wolverine while he's tailing them. But just before she spots him, and she gets close, but just before she spots him, this whole party is ambushed by a Wendigo. And these creatures are a byproduct of a curse that'll take hold of anyone who engages in cannibalism in this Canadian wilderness area. And I almost feel like a long time ago I did a video on the great beasts of the north where we talked more about Marvel's mythical creatures in this area, but I feel like the Wendigo is the most popular, so I won't go too deep into that here. But when this thing attacks, at first it catches Logan off guard, which he finds to be a bit embarrassing, but it's not long before he notices that something's off. Because this thing isn't as quick or as vicious as the Wendigo usually are. So he's able to stop this thing pretty quick. But the thing that lets him know that there's more going on here is when this Wendigo says help, which shouldn't be a thing because Wendigo are usually only able to say their own name as a part of the curse after their transformation. And this led to Wolverine following it back to a rundown cabin, which at first he wasn't sure if this was a trap or not. But then he quickly came to realize, like, Wendigo, they're not really smart creatures. So it's not likely that one would set all this up as a trap just to lure him in. Not impossible, but more so not likely. And when Logan gets here, the Wendigo hands him a journal. And that's where he finds out that this thing was just a kid by the name of Leonard, who stayed at a shelter with his friend and eventually they ran away. And when they did, while dealing with the harsh cold, they took shelter in this cabin. But Leonard's friend didn't make it. And with Leonard being stuck in here and starving, he started eating pieces of his friend. And that's how he fell under the curse of the Wendigo. So with seeing this and even leading up to this point, Logan felt sympathy for him because he knew the signs of a hurt animal and he's been in that place where he's had to fight for what shred of humanity he's had left in his past with Weapon X and even quite literally as a Wendigo. And speaking of Logan's past, it's here where they hear Department H catching up. So Logan takes the kid Leonard and they get out of there to where they run for a while. They hide till the coast is clear and then they go on the move again. But eventually Leonard breaks away from Logan when the bloodlust gets the best of him because nearby one of the soldiers from Department H took a slip down a hill, it got messy, and Leonard was like, ooh, that smelled like a snack. But even now, you can tell Leonard's still in there and he's trying to fight this because he only bit this guy on the shoulder as opposed to tearing him to pieces. Because after Leonard's transformation into a Wendigo, this kid's been starving. So this could have played out a whole lot worse. And Logan notices this, but the catch is now that Leonard's fed, as a Wendigo, he is way stronger than he was before when he hadn't fed. So Logan finds it a lot more difficult to tame this kid, so he slips away. And at first, Logan starts to go after him, but then he hears the soldier behind him begging for help, and he remembers that there's still a chance that this guy could turn into a Wendigo, because sometimes the curse can be passed through a bite. So quickly, Logan gives this guy some of his blood, and he puts a makeshift bandage on his wounds, both from the bite and from the fall. But right after this, when he catches up with Leonard, he sees that more soldiers from Department H have caught up to him. So Logan ends up handling these guys quickly because there's just a couple of them just before he goes back to taking care of Leonard. And when Logan does, he goes for the aggressive attack, slicing Leonard across the chest, which then has the kid like, no, please, which shows him again that this kid is in there and he's trying to fight this. So right here, Logan, who's every bit of 5'3", he puts this Hulk-sized Wendigo in a sleeper, and eventually he's able to get Leonard to go down. And it's here where he's caught by another member of Department H, who's the same soldier that he saw earlier who looked like she had a bit more sense than the others. So what he does is he tries to talk her down, but she ends up shooting anyway. And the thing I don't get is like how you work for Department H and ain't nobody at no point in time warned you about Wolverine. Because this dude has been trying his hardest this entire time not to kill these people. And with her just shooting Wolverine like an animal here, he has to literally tell himself to take a breath and force himself to speak to her like a person just so he can disarm her and let her know that he's not going to kill her. He's leaving with this Wendigo, and it would be smart if she does not try to follow. And just after this, we jump over to Japan, where we find Cyber looking for Lady Deathstrike. But her men have no idea what he wants, because Cyber's just taking them down one after the other without saying a word. So when Yuriko shows up, she sees Cyber's glowing eyes, she sees the golden sheen on his adamantium, but she doesn't realize the reason why he's not saying a word is because he's not in control. And before you know it, this living mystery metal, it spreads to Yuriko, and now she's under its influence as well. And around this time when we jump back over to Logan, we find that he's managed to help Leonard tame the beast, so to speak, by reminding him to breathe like a human and showing him the different things that Logan had learned that have helped him in the past, like we've seen throughout this story. And it's come to the point where now he's trying to get Leonard to continue to use actual words. Words like Logan's name, for example. And eventually he gets him to say Lodigan, which, considering what the kid's going through, it's close enough. And Logan makes sure to call Leonard by his name to basically remind him of his humanity, but he also recognizes that this kid's gotta be pretty tough to still be in there holding on to anything, because most grown men who have had the curse before, they would have long given up by now. But Leonard's still hanging in there, and the better he does with his training, the more control he has over his hunger, almost like the curse is meeting him halfway. And at this point, with things getting too hot in Canada, with Department H looking for the two of them, Logan's managed to bring the kid into the States and rent out a cabin which he paid cash for to see if he can help the kid out until they figure out something else. But then it's around this time where Logan hears a huge explosion on the highway, and he can tell by the scent coming from the smoke that this wasn't just some roundaway accident, because he can smell the military explosives in the air. So he gets ready to go check it out because, after that talk with Kurt, there's no more hiding from the world. And as he gets ready to leave, Leonard's just out here eating a deer, so Logan tells him to remember to hide like they practiced. And it puts a smile on Logan's face just to see that some of the good that he's trying to do here is starting to pay off. Because even though Leonard's still kind of struggling with the speech thing, it wasn't too long ago where he wouldn't bother to try and eat anything with more than 2 legs. So Logan's happy to see that some progress is taking hold here. But when he gets up to the highway to see what happened, he quickly notices this was a heavy-duty prisoner transfer convoy. Man, whoever they were hauling, they already got out. So he tries to catch a scent through all the smoke and the blood, and he picks up a scent that's very familiar, with it being the scent of adamantium. And he picks this up just before he's whipped with one of the adamantium coils of Constrictor. And I will say, Constrictor, he's one of those guys that you can consider to be at the bottom of the adamantium user totem pole. But he goes on to tell Logan here that word got to him when he was locked up about someone breaking him out during a transfer, though he doesn't know who. And he asks Wolverine, "What are you doing here anyway? Ain't all of you muties supposed to be on an island somewhere?" And it's just like, yeah, this dude missed a lot on the inside. But that right there's enough to get Wolverine pissed. And I'll tell you right now, this fight, if you want to call it that, it's over quickly. Because Constrictor is out before you know it, and that's it. But now, instead of Logan calling the authorities, he decides to do otherwise, since both him and Leonard got caught up in a manhunt recently. So instead, he makes a call to Kurt to have him come and pick up Constrictor and also get him some medical attention at some point. But as soon as Logan gets off the call with Kurt, he picks up another scent, which is of the person who was breaking Constrictor out, and that's Lady Deathstrike. And so the first thing Logan's thinking is like, okay, Yuriko already feels some kind of way about him, since her father invented the process that bonds adamantium to bone. So for that reason, she sees Logan as a thief, even though it wasn't his choice to have adamantium bonded to his bones. So basically when she sees him, it's like a sign of disrespect to her father. But unlike Lady Deathstrike's encounter with Cyber, Wolverine quickly notices that something's not right, because Yuriko is usually the very talkative type. And it's like her answering with her blade, that's to be expected, but usually she would follow that with some sort of speech or proclamation. But that's not happening here. And so when Logan sees the glowing eyes, as well as the new upgrades, and he's just like, okay, yeah, this is a different enemy that I'm dealing with here. And when he's caught off guard, Lady Deathstrike heads over to Constrictor. She picks him up with one hand, and she spreads this metal over to him. As she goes on to say, in a voice that Logan knows is not hers, "You are deafened by the screeching of the false metal within you. You have not yet heard the call of the Adamantine. It will speak to you if you will only listen." And it's here where she reaches out to Wolverine, where he says, "That voice that isn't Deathstrike's rings in my ears for an impossibly long moment. Then it becomes something else, a cold metallic sound calling to me. It's not mind control or telepathy. Feels older, primal, feels so ancient I can hear the passing of ages. I've got good ears. I can always tell where a sound is coming from. And just before I pass out, I realize that ancient primal presence is coming from my own bones. I'm in a place beyond my body, surrounded by a call that repeats over and over, but some part of me knows this place isn't real. Some part of me knows my body is standing on a mountain road, paralyzed." And this is where Wolverine forces himself to come back too, though in this very moment he's still not able to move. But it's here where he realizes that it's the voice of the Adamantine that's taken over Lady Deathstrike and Constrictor. So next they go to spread it to him, but Logan's still not able to move, so there's nothing he can do here. And that's when Leonard jumps in to save the day. But the crazy thing is, when this happens, there's no kind of reaction from Lady Deathstrike or Constrictor. even as Leonard leaps forward and takes a bite out of Constrictor's shoulder. And I can only imagine that Constrictor still feels all of this, even though he's not in control. And even Logan admits that the sight of that creeps him out. You know, just seeing Constrictor have no reaction. But right here, Leonard just ends up snatching Logan and running away. And Logan feels the influence of the Adamantine get weaker the further they move away. But eventually he tells Leonard to put him down and get out of there because he doesn't want the kid to get killed trying to protect him. And right now it's Lady Deathstrike and Constrictor moving closer. It's here where Nightcrawler shows up and he's able to create some space to get them out of there. And so Logan catches him up to what's happened so far, or at least what he's managed to put together. Kurt asks him if he's sure that it wasn't a telepathic attack, and Logan tells him that it wasn't psionics and that it felt more primal. And with that in mind, Logan starts thinking about what Constrictor and Lady Deathstrike have in common, and that's where he realizes it's adamantium. And as it turns out, when Nightcrawler picked them up, he noticed an unidentifiable signal coming from Constrictor and Lady Deathstrike. And it's right here in the middle of their talk where they get a hit not too far away that matches that signal, which from here leads them to a factory, so they head over to check it out, only to find this factory under attack. So they lock Leonard in the Blackbird to avoid a situation of him being overtaken by bloodlust. But when they take a closer look around to see what's going on, Logan recognizes the resin leaking from these busted drums as one of the chemicals used to synthesize adamantium, which lets him know before things went left here, these guys were in fact producing adamantium. And as soon as Logan looks up, he sees Cyber, with a message behind him written in blood saying no more adamantium. And it's pretty clear to Logan that whatever took over Lady Deathstrike and Constrictor, it's taken over Cyber as well, which is something that he just didn't know until now, because last time he saw the guy, he was running with his tail tucked between his legs. But as Wolverine goes to attack him again, Cyber just holds his hand up, and that same voice speaks through him again, saying, "You are deafened by the screeching of false metal within you. You have not yet heard the call of the Adamantine." And once again, this metal confronts Logan with the illusion, like we saw earlier, but this time he's ready, and he fights back, so it's not like he's just stopped in his tracks. And around this time, when Nightcrawler gets back, after trying to evacuate as many of the workers as he could find, and it's right here as Logan just gets this crippling headache, starts to do this examination of Wolverine while contemplating about how he's different than the others who were more easily taken over. And that's when it says here, the other screeching wielders of false metal were weak, easily seized. But this one that makes no unnecessary noise is stronger, purer. Perhaps all the true champions have not crumbled into dust. Perhaps this one called Wolverine could serve its purpose, but only after he is broken. But fortunately, it isn't too long after this where Logan's able to pull himself out of it, and he's not even sure how much time had passed, because at this point, Cyber is long gone, and just before this, Kurt was evacuating as many workers as he could, and I mean the ones who were still yet alive. But come to find out, now they have a whole nother problem on their hands, because when they go back to the Blackbird, they find out that Leonard has torn his way out of there. And it turns into a bit of a good news, bad news kind of thing, where the good news is he didn't go that far, but the bad news is Lord Kenny had just shown up, and all she knows is this is a Wendigo, so she's ready to kill him. And I don't really blame her, because the last thing you want is for one of these things to be running around and making more, but fortunately Logan's able to hop in just in time and stop her, and not long after that he fills her in on what happened here, as well as everything that's happened recently with Lady Deathstrike, Constrictor, Cyber, and the Adamantine. And it's here where we find out from Laura that there was also an institute in Cambridge that was attacked, where half a dozen scientists were killed, and all of them were metallurgists, which is why she was in the area. But it's pretty clear here that those deaths are connected. And at one point, Laura tells Logan that she's recently been feeling a call literally in her bones, which tells us that she's been hearing the same voice that Logan's been hearing as well. But just going off of all this, it isn't enough to let them know where Lady Deathstrike, Cyber, or Constrictor are now. Because if they're taking these extreme measures to rid the world of adamantium, then the sooner they're stopped, the better. So that's where Kurt uses the Blackbird to see if he can get another hit on their unique energy signature, much like before. And that's where they pick up another signal in Arizona. But given the current condition that the Blackbird is in, Kurt ends up having to bamf both Laura and Logan over there. But he doesn't end up staying because Logan needs somebody to go back and Wendigo sit Leonard in the meantime, because Leonard can't be left alone. So for that reason, Kurt goes back to keep an eye on him. But when Logan and Laura make their way inside this building to check it out, there are bodies everywhere. Because as it turns out, this location is a data center. So now it's like, not only is the Adamantine trying to get rid of the few people who know how to make adamantium, in however many particular forms, but it's also trying to get rid of any data centers holding that sensitive information. And at this point, Logan knows that Cyber, Constrictor, and Lady Deathstrike are all here, because he's picked up their scent. So the next thing they do is make their way to the servers, since that's where the physical data would be stored. So they rush over there, and as soon as they go in the server room, they find Donald Pierce, whose cybernetics are coated in an adamantium finish. So for a moment here, as the room's burning down, Wolverine's just like, yeah, I should have remembered this guy, because he really wasn't thinking of him until he picked up his scent just before they walked in the room. And just like Cyber and the others, Donald's mind's been taken over as well. And it's here where the voice speaks through him saying, hear its call, and follow. So Laura and Logan follow him deeper in, and at first they're just like, okay, well, where did he go? Because it's hard to pick up a scent because of the fire. But it isn't too long before they find themselves surrounded by Donald, Cyber, Constrictor, and Lady Deathstrike. And after seeing that they're surrounded, there's a brief pause and then the fight just pops off. But the funny thing that happens here is, like, at one point, Cyber and Lady Deathstrike, they end up doing a fastball special, and it's just kind of like, man, how you gonna do that one on Wolverine? That's just disrespectful. But eventually Logan and Laura, they come out on top. But not long after they take these guys down, they all get back up like some puppets. And when they do, another person steps in, someone who Logan hasn't seen in a while, as they say, oh, I think that's quite enough. Our friends have served their petty little purpose. It's been a long time, Logan. The last time we met, you made a mistake. You let me live. Now, I come to wield a power you can't comprehend. I am its prophet and its avatar. But you are weak and ignorant, and you are in my way. And it's here where we see the person who's saying all this, and it's Romulus. But he's not being controlled by the Adamantine like the others. His situation's different. We'll talk about that in a moment. But right here, as soon as Laura hears Logan say this is Romulus, she's like, wait, this is Romulus? The guy who claims to have founded Rome? The dude who claims to be the origin of our bloodline? And Logan tells her she's got a good memory. But he's like, most of it's lies and head games, but he's still dangerous. So Logan basically lets Laura know that she needs to keep her guard up, because this dude is serious. And Laura notices here, unlike the others, Romulus is more blood and less metal. So he's basically his normal self here. But with all this talking about him right in front of him, Romulus tells Laura that she's being rude. And since her dad Logan hasn't taught her any manners, he's gonna take this as an opportunity to teach her himself. And this is where we learn quite a bit more here. Because for starters, Laura's like, isn't this dude supposed to be locked up in the raft? Only for Romulus to tell them he was never trapped there. And he just tells him, like, as an ancient emperor in this modern world, everywhere felt like a prison. So the way he sees it, he had no reason to escape until recently. And he goes on to tell them when he ruled Rome, he sent out spies and soldiers in search of a primal power. And there were whispers about it in different codices, a buried power older than men, older than even the gods, a power that could make a man into a god. The text described this power as the primordial spirit of metal itself. They called it the Adamantine. For all my searching, though I never found it, figured it was lost to the world when the age of myth ended. But then you went and woke it up. You were the last straw, Logan. How does that feel? So Logan tells him here that most of what Romulus is saying is probably Mitchell-esque, but he entertains this. So he asks him, why isn't he a zombie like Cyber and the others? So he tells Logan, because they are servants and I am a sovereign. They are mere thralls of the Adamantine, but I am its regent and champion. The age of myth is returning, Logan. A return to the glory and grandeur of the old heroes of legend. But for that to happen, those who have taken their place must die. And it's right here where Romulus does the glow up thing, because he's basically playing support and tank right now. But it's right here where he causes Cyber and the others to catch their second wind. And that's when they all join Romulus in the fight. And it's kind of messed up the way this pops off, because early on Cyber tosses Wolverine up in the air, only for him to get caught with a right hook before he can even touch the ground. And because of this, it isn't long before Logan and Laura are separated, which is precisely what Romulus wants, because it's here where he says, you're as strong as ever, Wolverine, but you're still a pup. You've never known what to do with your strength, but the Adamantine will show you. Come, we've been summoned. And right there, just with a lift of his hand, the ground breaks up from around him and Logan, and the two of them go falling under. And it's not like Laura can really do anything here, with her being surrounded by the others. And when this happens, we're told that it's about a 6-story drop. So as you might imagine, it's a very painful landing for Logan. And once he's down there, it takes a moment for him to adjust a little bit, heal up, and more or less get a sense of his surroundings, because he can also see in the dark, but it takes a second or two for him to get adjusted. But just based off Romulus being able to send the two of them down here the way he did, this lets Logan know that the guy's got a power upgrade, because the dude will get down with anything that'll make him stronger. And when he leaps out to attack Logan, this dude is completely covered with adamantine from head to toe. But when Logan tries to take a slice at him, he is not able to cut through it. And that's where he remembers other things that are made of the same metal, like Hercules' club. And there's other things as well, like the trident of Neptune and the shield of Perseus, because like Romulus said, it's referred to as the metal of the gods. But aside from that, you also have people like the James Howlett of Earth 12025 back in Astonishing X-Men, whose bones were laced with this metal. And there's a whole history between this guy and Hercules that I'd rather not go into for this video. But as far as I'm aware, every time we've seen this metal, there's been some type of connection, either directly or indirectly, tying it back to the gods. But right here, Logan goes on to say, Romulus is a warrior. He's been killing people since before Jesus was born, and he's damn good at it. His ambition has always been off the charts. Half his beef with me is that I don't want to be world-conquering buddies with him. But now he's found a new friend, one even more ancient than he is. Even while I'm fighting, my mind struggles to put the pieces together, until Romulus's claws sink deep into my guts, and the metal's golden glow mingles with my blood, and puts them together for me. And Romulus goes on to say here, you can feel it even as we fight, Logan. You can sense it deep within the earth, in the place where metal is born. You're there, untold ages ago. Smell the cooling earth. Experience the spirit of metal itself, the adamantine, being birthed. Feel yourself all those ages ago and recall that you were nothing but potential, an undeveloped infant that existed but didn't live. And recall with rapture the age of myth, when gods discovered you and taught you purpose. Remember the ring of Hephaestus' hammer, as it shaped the aimless adamantine into something that mattered. The helm of Hades, the axe of Pluto, Hercules' golden mace. For an age, your martial song rang out in the hands of gods and heroes, metal pure and true, wielded by the worthy. Now recall the passing of the age of myth, how weary and ready for rest the adamantine had grown, how you slumbered contentedly, dreaming of deeds of valor, until your slumber was pierced by a slivery screech, the sound of a new metal, not born of the earth, but made by men with soft hands. The din of a new metal with a stolen name, the false metal of a fallen age, adamantium. Like a plague, this man-made metal has spread, poisoning the earth with its untruth. For years, the noise of it has grown louder and louder to the adamantine. And thanks to you, that din has finally grown loud enough to wake it, which right there is referring to the clash between Logan and Cyber from issue 1. And this is where Romulus goes on to say, the sad little thralls from above have served their purpose, and so the adamantine reclaims the gifts it granted them. All of their power is mine to wield now. And when this happens, Logan sees him surging with strength, as if Romulus has been turbo boosted, to where now this guy's moving as fast as lightning. And Romulus goes on to say here, the power of the gods, Logan. This is just a taste, and the only thing standing in the way of my becoming a deity is you. So now the adamantine is back and it's sentient, it's almost like it wants the two of these guys to fight for the right of being its champion. Or it's already chosen Logan and it just wants Romulus to prepare him. Or it might not go to either one of these guys and Leonard will swoop in and take it. And we'll just have an adamantine Wendigo running around. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.